Let's address the part about Martin Luther King being an abusive womanizer and communist sympathizer. Verify for yourself. And if you come to the conclusion that he was, does it make his efforts for racial equality invalid?
I think what happened. Propaganda.
I have to put that out there because it's a pet peeve of mine when people act like they're so above everybody else because they know someone else is flawed. Well, good for you. You figured out the great mystery that none of us are perfect. Like people who try to throw things in my face about Abraham Lincoln and the Ghost Amendment. Now, listen close to how these people contradict themselves. Neo-Confederates will swear up and down that the war wasn't about slavery. It was Lincoln's war against states' rights. And I'll remind y'all that no, it was Lincoln going to war with the Confederacy that wanted to use their states' rights to violate human rights. The Neo-Confederates want to accuse Lincoln of being this bloodthirsty warmonger. They bring up the Ghost Amendment or the Corn Amendment, which says, no amendment shall be made to the Constitution which will authorize or give to Congress power to abolish or interfere within any state the domestic institutions thereof, including that of persons held to labor or service by the laws of said state. Lincoln's opinion of this was the following. Holding such a provision to now be implied constitutional law, I have no objection to its being made express and irrevocable. So, if the pending war wasn't about slavery, and if Lincoln was such a warmonger, why would the Republicans try to ease tensions with the South with that Corn Amendment? Why would the Republicans draft an amendment that would give the South the notion that their slave institutions wouldn't be threatened? Because that's what the Democratic South was most worried about. Their so-called right to keep the institution of slavery in their states. And to avoid war, the Republicans offered the Corwin Amendment. Don't tell me that the Republicans were hankering for a war. Don't try to tell me that the South was only trying to protect their state sovereignty. Now, if you look at the Corwin Amendment closely, you'll notice the word slave or slavery isn't mentioned in it. The Corwin Amendment uses the word persons. Democrats didn't acknowledge the personhood of slaves, namely blacks. And that was and still is a great defining characteristic between Republicans and Democrats. Republicans don't disqualify personhood. Democrats do. And in the Corwin Amendment, the writing is very clever. First up, the amendment is correct in basically saying Congress has no power to tell states how to run their business. But if that state is violating the supreme law of the land, and that law includes not depriving a person of their life, liberty, or their property without due process, and if a state makes labor part of the punishment for their crimes, then that is consistent with the Constitution. But they can't force someone into labor. They have to commit a crime and then go through due process that finds them guilty, then sentenced to labor. That's why the Corwin Agreement includes the words held to labor or service by the laws of said state. The Corwin Amendment wasn't a pro-slavery amendment. It was a carefully crafted amendment that shows that it was the Southern Democrats who wanted to keep slavery and wanted to go to war for it. That's why the Republicans drafted that amendment that the Neo-Confederates try to throw in our face. If slavery had nothing to do with the war, why would Republicans use slavery as a supposed bargaining chip to pacify the Southern Democrats? Whether it was Lincoln or Martin Luther King, y'all can try to tear them down to make yourselves look like you're better people. But people like Martin Luther King, for all his faults, stood for a righteous cause. He's not like Obama, who appears to be a solid family man like Martin Luther King allegedly wasn't. But Obama does not stand for a righteous cause. Martin Luther King did. Not every cause Martin Luther King stood for was right, but one of those causes, being racial equality, was right. And it was right in a huge way. But his other faults should not detract from that. And what's sad is that too many liberals have missed his message in a huge way. For example, the way American blacks treat each other. They talk about how the white man has treated us, but a lot of American blacks who talk about this weren't even around for that. And what's worse is American blacks commit more crimes against each other than American whites do. The majority of American blacks get called more bigoted epithets by other American blacks than American whites. I'm sure Martin Luther King would love it that American blacks have made a gazillion-dollar industry calling each other the N-word and glorifying violence against each other. Yet they didn't sell out. Now, I don't think there's ever been a word shaped with more hate than the N-word. It's as if somebody sold their soul to the devil to come up with a word so fueled with hate to curse another person with. And the effect of that cursed word is to void personhood. And just as blacks were called the N-word rather than man or woman, so as to program to see themselves as less than men or women or less than human, many American blacks are trapped in that cursed conditioning as they remind themselves of the programming that they are N-words, less than men, less than women, less than human. With that programming of not valuing themselves as humans, it's no surprise that American blacks will be the leading abortion cases. The curse of the N-word takes its toll as blacks see themselves as less than human. American blacks commit the most violent crimes against each other, and many call each other the N-word at the end of every sentence, even during mid-sentence. Hell, even at the beginning of sentences too. And considering the negative effect it has on them, they're deceived by the idea that it's a term of endearment. Oh, you know that's just how we do. Yet, when they're pumping bullets into each other, they call each other the N-word too. And I don't think endearment has anything to do with it. But it does keep with the curse that you're not murdering a human being. You're just killing an N-word. You think Martin Luther King would be proud? Or maybe you don't care what he'd think. And on a side note, it looks ridiculous to me when blacks try to make up words to try to insult white people with. Cracker? Really? Honky? Ouch. It reminds me of another singer I played in a band with. He thought it would be a great idea to have us standing under a tree hanging some KKK members. I'm like, dude, the KKK have real pictures of people that they hung, and that's not something to be proud of. And here it is, you want to photograph a fantasy. That's lame. I'm going to teach those KK guys a lesson. I'm going to make a fake picture of us hanging them, and I'm going to call them Peckerwood. That'll show them. Y'all, I don't like the Klan either. But if you really want to teach them a lesson, do what I do. Stop voting for Democrats. Here's where the libs bring up the party switch cop-out. And here's where I say, please get a copy of my audiobook, Weapon of Mass Destruction. It also has plenty for y'all to consider who want to co-opt, twist, and invoke Martin Luther King's dream for your own selfishness. Whether it be homosexuals forcing us to endorse their lifestyle, or illegal immigrants forcing us to make our country like the one they just ran from. Lastly, let me give another tip to American whites. I know y'all mean well when you say race doesn't matter. The thing that y'all aren't registering though is that many people, blacks, Asians, Hispanics, even whites, etc., identify themselves with their ethnicity. So when you say race doesn't matter, what they hear is you saying they don't matter. And while I'm on the subject, using terms like ethnic as if whites are separate from being an ethnicity and everybody else is ethnic, and liberals wear this term out as if it makes them look really cultured, as they refer to people who aren't white as ethnic. That says to us, who aren't suckered by the pandering, that you're too shallow to recognize that you're an elitist who assumes to come down to our level from your standard of humanity as a white person while everybody else is ethnic, but you're not. And to those who say that anybody can be the N-word, saying things like a white person could be an N-word too, stop it. Nobody says the N-word without thinking about a black person. Don't fool yourself. When you try to insult a white person by calling them an N-word, you're trying to insult them by saying you're lower than blacks. I'm Alfonso Rachel with ZoNATION, and it's really sad how the dream of Martin Luther King has been co-opted and disgraced by the Democrat Party, the party that imposed the institution that Martin Luther King was fighting against. American blacks are sold out for the Democrat Party, and it was a Democrat that shot Martin Luther King. And I'll remind you that American blacks literally let the Democrat Party get away with murder. Oh, you know that's just how we do.